السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I hope everybody is doing well, and I hope everybody was able to find the stream easily enough. I know we didn't make an announcement yesterday, but inshallah we'll be continuing the review sessions unless otherwise stated. We did not have one yesterday in case anybody was thinking they missed it. Um, inshallah, continuing forward until the end of the last intensive, we will have our review sessions. So Bismillah, walhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Bishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma ameen, amma ba'd. Let me add the document, share my screen. Okay. All right then, let's get started inshallah. Yes, the class is supposed to start in an hour. This is not the live session. This is the review session. So any questions you might have, feel free to ask them now. I mean, not any question, but questions related to the intensives up until the point we've already reached. I'm not going to be answering questions about stuff that's to come. I'm only going to be answering questions about stuff we've covered. I'm not going to be answering tech questions. So, inshallah, keep it related. In terms of the test, I'm also not going to be going over the test because Ustad said we'll go over that together. So, yeah. What is this whole thing about? Saad, what do you mean by this whole thing? If you're talking about the intensives, then it's about learning Arabic. If you're talking about life, then that's not a question I can answer for you. Can I ask about Nahu? Yes, you can ask about Nahu. How do you write tastheed? I'm not sure what that's supposed to say. But the closest I mean, if I just sound it out, then that's heed. Is that what you want? Or maybe you're talking about how do you use a shadda? This one. In that case, then you hold shift and you press the button to the left of the number 1 key. Lam, the word lam, hiba, if you remember, way back when we did the harf of lightest, we had lam, lamma, wal, fal, and li. So lam yalid wa lam yulad in Surah Ikhlas is a harf of lightest. When an ism is attached to a pronoun, it is always mudaf ilayh. That's right, Mishi. What is the status of the ism? That one depends on the context. Because I can say, for example, let's see. Okay, let's see with the pronoun, because that's what you asked about. Rasuluhu. Rasuluhu. Here we go. So in this case, we have idafa because of the attached pronoun hu with the word rasulu. And in this case, the word rasulu is rafa' because I just made it rafa'. I don't have any reason to make it anything else, right? By default, we said one of the reasons for rafa' is by default. But I can also say, for example, In this case, I added a harf of nasab beforehand, so the harf of nasab is affecting the word rasulu and it's turning it into rasula. So it's still an idafa, but the status of rasula isn't rafa anymore, now it's nasab. And likewise, I could do the same thing um, and add a harf of jar instead, and then I would change it to li Now it's jar. This is still an idafa, but the harf of jar is making the mudaf majroor. So the status of the ism in the status of the mudaf in an idafa can change. The status of the mudaf in the idafa, it can be rafa' nasab or jar, but the status of the mudaf ilayh always has to be jar. What is this light and lightest of nasarat? So the mistake here is in the way you're framing your question. When we talked about light and lightest only apply to present tense. This word nasarat is past tense, so it's not going to have a light and a lightest. This is all it is. Nasarat, that's it. But you can say for tansuru, what is the light and lightest? So in this case, the light would be tansura and the lightest would be tansur. But nasarat doesn't have a light and lightest. Can we go to the Surah Munafiqun PDF? Ustad is going to go through the Surah Munafiqun with you guys. It's just posted now so that you guys can get a head start on reading. But inshallah, we'll go over it with Ustad. Saud Iqbal, the main pronunciation difference, can you clarify what you mean by that? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. In the case of a harf of jar and its victim, Mishi, yes, only the victim is an ism because the other one has to be the harf of jar, which is what the fragment is named after, right? Harf of jar, one of them has to be a harf. So when we talked about the fragments, 5 fragments, each of them is made up of 2 words, right? The harf of jar and the harf of nasab is a harf ism pair, right? The first word is the harf, the second word is the victim, which is an ism. But for the other 3, ism ishara, the pointers, idafa, and mawsuf sifa, that's an ism and an ism. So both words in those combinations, in those fragments, will be isms. Mustsid, I haven't mentioned the passive meaning in a lot of the families. That is on purpose. If the particular word being used doesn't have a passive, then I'm just writing it out just for the sound purpose, but I'm not defining it because the passive doesn't make any sense. Like, for example, aslama means if you submitted, but it's not like the submission where you're submitting something. It's a submission where where you yourself are going into submission. So you can't you yourself go into submission something else. You can only do that with yourself, so it's intransitive. So I wrote out uslima and yuslamu because just to give you the sound practice, the practice for converting it into a passive, but the meaning of that doesn't make sense. It's an intransitive verb. Hiba, using the anti-acronym to identify a present tense fi'l, that will, okay, when you ask if it'll always work to identify them, I can say yes in the sense that a present tense fi'l will always have one of those letters at the beginning. But in terms of if you don't know if it's a fi'l or not, then you can't see hamza, noon, ya, or ta, and then automatically assume it's a um, it's a fi'l. Because for example, allama yu'allimu ta'liman. This is an ism and we know that because it's the masdar also has tanween here, but it starts with a ta. If you tried to use the anti-acronym to as like an end-all be-all tool for recognition, then you would run into an error like this, where you would see ta'liman and you'll think, okay, now it's an I see ta at the beginning, so it has to be a fi'l mudari', and that would be a mistake. This is not a fi'l mudari', even though it starts with ta. And as we learned in family 5 and family 6, these two words are fi'l madi, past tense, but they still start with ta. So you can't use it as a blanket statement. It starts with ya, ta, noon, alif. That means it's a fi'l mudari'. No. Um, there are other things you need to use in conjunction with that. But every present tense fi'l will start with ya, ta, noon, or alif. Or, no, sorry, not alif, hamza. After you've ruled out an ism, then you could use that, yes. The PDFs are under the study resource section of the Bayyinah website. On the family sheets, are there any errors? I don't think so, LB, but if you think you are seeing an error, then let me know and I'll take a look at it. Isn't the Sarf workbook available without logging in? I'm not actually sure. Let me check. No, it's not. You have to log in. Iya is a very complex word, so I'm not going to tackle that here. Okay, can we go over the word nasta'inu? I can do that one. So for those of you who run into for those of you who might get confused here, you might get confused if you think that this is a combination with a noon beginning and an ina ending, but um, sorry, one second. I got distracted. Give me one moment. Okay, so back to what I was saying. You might get confused if you think this is a noon beginning with an ina ending, but um, if you look carefully, first of all, this is not an ina ending; it's an inu ending, and we never talked about inu anywhere. We never talked about inu anywhere. So this is not a noon beginning with an inu ending. What we did talk about was that by uh, by by default, right, the normal version of a present tense fi'l, it has a noon beginning and an oo ending. A noon beginning and an oo ending. And we already know family 10 does look kind of like this at the beginning, right? Istaghfara, yastaghfiru, nastaghfiru, nastaghfiru. So this is a kind of a complex fi'l because of the ya in the middle. This ya is a part of the root, and that's why it looks a little bit like where we have a combination at the end, but this is not a combination. This is the nahnu form of family 10 present tense. Nastaghfiru, nasta'inu. غيري Hiba, if you take a look at the Intensive 1 workbook, in the section for Idafa, there was a page of what we call special mudafs. And on that page, you'll see the word, there's two sections. It's page 22. There's two sections. In the second section, you'll see four words, بعض, كل, غير, and أي. So the word غيري is the same as the word غير, but just made jar. So it's a special mudaf, so that makes it an ism. Khadija, if aslama starts with Hamza, why is it past tense and not present tense? Just because the present tense uses those four letters doesn't mean that any other form can't use those four letters. Does that make sense? Sure, present tense can have a Hamza at the beginning, but so can isms, and so can past tense, and so can masdars, and other forms too. So just because you see a Hamza at the beginning doesn't automatically mean it's always going to be a present tense. That would be very, very limiting for the vocabulary of Arabic if we restricted letters to certain forms. So while present tenses always start with one of those four letters and one of those four letters being Hamza, that doesn't mean that other forms can't start with those four letters. Manzoor, in one of the intensive 3 review sessions, I think it might be 8 or 9, we went over commanding in detail. So check out those review sessions, inshallah. Abdul Aziz, when is hatta used as harf of nasab? When is it used as harf of jar? Well, if you see an ism after it, then it's being used as a harf of jar because harf of jar can only be used with isms. If you see it, if you see, well, it won't ever be used as a harf of nasab because harf of nasab fragment was also for isms, but it'll be used as a harf of light when you see a fi'l after it, a present tense fi'l after it. Nabil, the last word in Surah Ikhlas has tanween. Ahadun, the last word in Surah Ikhlas is ahadun. Um, so yes, the tanween makes it an ism. Maha, that's not something we went over in class. Aziza, you don't know enough to eliminate it yet. At least not completely. So I'm gonna leave that for now, inshallah. Khadija, um, Ustad used aslamu as an example for present tense. Aslamu isn't a word. Well, it can be a word, but I don't know why he would use that one. I don't recall exactly what you're saying, what you're referencing with aslamu, but it wouldn't be aslamu, it would be uslimu or uslamu. Um, So the Hamza would have a Dhamma on it in both cases. But it's past tense because that's just what it is. I really can't tell you much other than that. Aslama is it matches the family 4 pattern of af'ala, and that's what makes it a past tense. So aslama. Um, what are other examples? Akhraja, adkhala, al'ana, um, akrama, so on. We could keep going on, but you'll see they all follow the same pattern, which is the roots being switched out. These are all family. These are all the aslama family, past tense. Lam alif would be a harf, Arisha. With tajweed, when you see a mud, does that also change the meaning of a word? The longer ones no, but the shorter ones can. But the longer ones are a purely tajweed thing. So, like for example, if I said sama, um, this when you're reading this in Quran, this would be a mud. So you say sama, right, with a little one of these. But in the word, in the same exact word, when it comes to the actual like Arabic, is just sama'a or sama'u, right? Without without the mud on it. That the mud in this case is added for tajweed. Um, but if you're going from like, for example, actually, I don't want to use that one. Um, okay, why not? No, that one doesn't work either. If I think of a good example to show you, I will come up with one, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. Um, but going from just like a regular one vowel word to a two vowel mud can change the meaning, but the okay, I got one. Aslama, aslama. So here, adding this mud changed the meaning. Went from one person, he, to two people doing the act, doing the submitting, right? So in this case, the meaning did change. So going from a one vowel to a two vowel can change the meaning, but the extra vowels 4 and 6 don't change the meaning. That's purely tajweed. Samaul. Which type of word are you talking about? Nashara is not a word that, I mean, it is a word, but it's not a family that we've gone over yet. So there are still, we said yesterday, there are 14 families that we need to learn. We've only learned 8. So you still got a long way to go. Live session is not working. I mean, is it really not? I'm looking at it on YouTube right now, and it sounds like it's working fine. Why does ahadun have a meme on top of it at the end of Surah Ikhlas? Okay, this is a tajweed thing, so I'm gonna only go over it briefly. Ahadun is the last word in Surah Ikhlas. So if you wanted to combine Surah Ikhlas with the next surah, then you would start the next surah with Bismillah, right? So there's a tajweed rule where if you have a noon sound followed by a ba like this, then you change the noon sound into a meme sound. So if you wanted to combine the two surahs, you would say وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. And that's how you would read it. So that's why that's there in case you want, the meme is there in the script in case you want to connect the two surahs. So that's kind of a hint as to how you connect them. Which form is the word muntasirun? Muntasirun. Um, well, out of all of the families that you know, actually, I want to see if you guys can tell me in the comments what family this would be. We know the, I mean, the form, not the form, Naima, you are correct, but I'm not asking for the shape of the word. I'm asking for the family of the word. So we can rule out allama and ta'allama immediately because there's no shadda in the word. Same thing for jahada and tasa'ala because there's no alif, right? So that's four families already ruled out. Um, we can rule out aslama because there's too many letters here. So it's five families we've ruled out. The only ones we have left are inqalaba, iqtaraba, and istaghfara. We can rule out istaghfara because there's no istaghfara. So the only ones we have left as a possibility are inqalaba. I don't know why the font changed. Inqalaba and iqtaraba. These are the only two possibilities we have. And honestly, from how much you know right now, you could assume either. Um, because in this one, if we replaced these three words with these three letters with ta, sad, and ra, then you would get the same thing, muntasirun. And in this one, if you replace the qaf, ra, and ba, and you left the ta, then you would get the same thing. But I'm telling you that it's iqtaraba because in this word muntasirun, the ta is not part of the root, and that's how you know in this case. So we could rule out 6 out of the 8, and then we got stuck on the last 2 because of the root, and that's something that last little hurdle, as you start getting more familiar with words, you'll be able to recognize these as well. No, istaghfara is not iqtaraba. Istaghfara is its own family. We already went over nasta'inu sadaf, so please rewind the video. Yes, nasta'inu is istaghfara. Maliha, it's a little bit of a complex fi'l. We haven't learned how to handle them yet, so they work a little bit differently. So don't worry about that, right? Don't worry about that right now. You're going to confuse yourself. Sama'u, we haven't talked about that yet, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. That's something to come in sentence structure. Yes, nasta'inu is present tense. Arisha, I already answered that question. Lam alif is a harf. Are families fi'l? Well, families have isms and fi'ls in them. Remember, we said aslama is a fi'l, yuslimu is a fi'l, but islaman and muslimun are isms. So they contain both isms and fi'ls. Um, Wisti, I'm not gonna go over ihdina. I already said I wouldn't do that today. If Ustad wants to go over it, the thing is, I don't know if Ustad wants me to go over it because it's complex, and I'd rather leave it alone. So if Ustad decides to, then that's fine. But I don't want to go over anything that Ustad doesn't want me to go over. So I'm gonna leave it alone, inshallah. I will tell you this much: ihdi is a fi'l. I'm not gonna go any more than that though. Yes, Mudassir, they will be uploaded. The notes will be uploaded, inshallah. Rabi'a, no, ta'liman is only the masdar for allama. The masdar for ta'allama would be ta'alluman. Ta'alluman, not ta'liman. Actually, I should write that out. Here, there you go. Allama yu'allimu ta'liman, but for ta'allama yata'allamu, it's ta'alluman. Ta'alluman. Maryam, which ayah are you talking about? You're talking about alayhim? The word alayhim? If that's what you're talking about, let me know. Amberina, those words don't exist in passive form. That's why the meaning isn't there. Yes, I am using Microsoft Word today. I upgraded. Just for you guys. Sadaf, you are correct. No, ihdi is not past tense. Lebi, I hope that name is right. Lebi. Yakun, yulad, and yalid, they're not commands because the command wouldn't have that ya at the beginning. Samaul, for right now, you're going to have some trouble with that, and that's fine. We're going to get to it once we delve a little bit deeper into sarf as well as sentence structure. Can الذين be mudaf ilayh? Yes, it can be. Habiba, wa is a harf, and lam is also a harf. Wala, these are both harfs. Okay, alayhim. Yeah, I can go over alayhim. So, you already know that him is an attached pronoun. We can get rid of that, and we're left with ala. And what we're familiar with is in the chart of harf jar, ba, ta, kaf, lam, waw, min, fi, an, ala, hatta, ila. So ala is our harf of jar. And when ala gets attached to certain pronouns, then this alif maqsura at the end, this one right here, this alif maqsura at the end turns into a ya for the sake of ease in pronunciation. We don't say alahim, we say alayhim. Alayhim. Because alahim sounds a little bit weird, so they changed that to make it easy. There's a couple things when it comes to Arabic that you guys will learn that um, if something sounds a little bit weird, then it gets changed to make it easier to say, to make it smoother to say. Can I tell you about alladina? Sure. Alladina. Alladina is one of our, it's called ism mawsul. We haven't covered it yet, but it's an ism. And that's all I can tell you. Muhammad Zishan Arif, when it comes to small wows and yas and alifs, then um, those aren't really going to have an impact on how it, okay, let me rephrase. If you see a small waw, ya, or alif at the end of a word, then that's something that's added into the script to help you to read. It's not something that has an impact on the nahu or the sarf of a word. So we don't need to worry about that. That's a tajweed thing. That's not a nahu sarf thing. Aziza, whenever we have a letter with double fatha, whoops. Whenever you have a letter that ends in double fatha, like one, then most of the time this alif is added after it, and that's just a thing that happens. Have you gotten over the difficult part of sarf? Uh, not quite yet. There's still some difficulty coming. But I will say you've gotten over one of the hardest parts. Introduction into the different families and kind of understanding each word in the family, past tense, present tense, masdar, ism fa'il, past passive, present passive, ism maf'ul, command, forbidding, and zarf. Understanding what each word is, and then understanding the differences between the families is one of the hardest parts. So, good job. Pat yourselves on the back. Allahumma is not a idafa. Allahumma is one word. Actually, it's a word with a harf at the end, but yeah. Princess Castle, how do we know if an attached pronoun is attached to a fi'l or an ism? We already stated that there's gonna be some mistakes when it comes to that. You're gonna make some mistakes. It's inevitable right now. Muhsin, my name is Ustad Jawad. So um, I'm handling the review session, and Ustad Noman's class is going to start in a minute. So I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to end this session, and then Ustad Norman will be here soon, and we'll start the regular class. If you don't know what an idafa is, then you need to go back to Intensive 1. You are in the wrong class. Outside doer is not for present tense only. Outside doer is for um, sorry, I blinked. Outside doer is for both past and present tense, and we're going to do 14 families, inshallah. We've done 8, we have 6 more to do. Will there be an intensive 5? There will not be an intensive 5. Tasfiyah. Okay. Oops. That's not what I wanted. This is the last example. This is the last question I'm taking, and then I'm going to end, inshallah. So how come when it comes to lahum, the lam is considered harf of jar, but when it comes to li rasuli, it's, or sorry, should be la rasulu. When it comes to la rasulu, it's not considered harf of jar. So we've gone over this before. We talked about when we have for specifically this harf of jar lam. Normally, this harf of jar lam takes a kasra, the e sound, right? Li rasuli. What I actually wrote the first time is what it would have been with the word rasul. So it should be with a kasra, li, and that's what it will be most of the time. The only time the harf of jar lam changes from li to la is when it's used with attached pronouns. If you see la with attached pronouns, then most of the time you'll be correct to say that this is harf of jar. But for any other ism, then it's going to be li. It's not going to be la. That's how we know, and that's why. You want to go into the details of why it's fatha with pronouns. That's just how it is. That's why certain things just are a way they are, and that's how the Arabs have been doing it, and that's the reason for it. This lam on la rasulu, it means something else. We're actually going to get into it. Actually, if you've read over the Surah Munafiqun first ayah notes, you should have a little bit of an understanding into this la. Um, but it'll come, inshallah. Don't worry, it'll come. Princess Castle, that's correct. It's la with pronouns only and li with other isms. Okay, so with that, we're going to end, inshallah. The class, the intensive 2 class will be starting, sorry, the intensive 4 day 2 class will be starting in a couple of minutes. So please be patient and we'll resume in a few minutes. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته